Alright guys, let's go ahead and talk about enabling and restarting network services with systemctl. So remember, systemctl is how we control the systemd system and act as a service manager. So we have a couple different ways we can input commands to the systemctl. We have status, restart, start, and stop. And we can use them like we have over here. Okay, but keep in mind guys, on CentOS 8, which is what I'm using and probably what you're using, network.service is deprecated, meaning it's no longer used. So on CentOS 8, it's actually network manager.service, which we're going to see here in a moment, okay? So let's go ahead and pull up our VirtualBox, test a couple of these out. So just real quickly, if I show you systemctl status network.service, it's going to say that it can't find that, right? Could not be found. And again, that's because network.service is deprecated, okay? So if I run that same command again, status, except this time I do network manager.service. This time I do get a status, okay? It tells me it's running, it's loaded, everything's looking good, and it's fine, okay? Let me clear my screen. I can do the same thing, except this time I can do a stop. Now I'll lose internet when I do this, okay? So keep that in mind. You are going to lose internet on your VirtualBox when you do this. Oops. I put in wrong. I misspelled it. CTL. There we go. I forgot a letter. Alright. Now when I do system SYSTEMCTL status, it should tell me that it is stopped. There you go. See? It says it's loaded, but it's inactive, dead. That's because I stopped the manager. Okay. Let me clear my screen. Let's go ahead and start it back up. So I can do the start command. Oops. Network manager. So systemctl start network manager. Now I can do status again. And you'll even notice your little Wi-Fi thing will come back up. Status network manager. There you go. Now it says it's active and running. Okay. Now guys, if I run a restart, okay, it's just going to start it and stop it, and I won't actually notice any difference, okay? But restart's typically used when something's hung up or it's not really working, and we want to try and restart it to see if it'll start working again, okay? Let's go back to our slides here. So we can configure basic networking manually. Every network interface has its own configuration file, and that's an etc sysconfig network scripts directory. Okay. Each interface has a configuration file named ifconfig dash, and then the interface name x. Okay, x is the number of the interface, so we start with 0 or 1 depending upon the naming convention. So for example, we could have etc sysconfig network scripts ifconfig dash ethernet 0. Meaning the first Ethernet connection, okay? So there are many configuration options for the interface configuration files. These are some of the more common options, okay? Guys, I'm going to go through all these, read them to you, then I'm going to go over to the VirtualBox and I'm going to show them to you, okay? So first one's device. This is the logical name of the device, such as Ethernet 0 or EMPOS2, okay? HW address or hardware address. This is the MAC address of the NIC. That is bound to the file. We have on boot, which means that we can start the network on this device when the host boots, and the options for that are yes or no. This is typically set to no, and the network does not start until a user logs in the desktop. Okay, so if you need the network to start when no one is logged in, you just set it to yes. We have IP address. This is the IP assigned to the NIC. We have broadcast. This is the broadcast address for the network. We have net mask, which is the net mask for the subnet, such as Class C subnet mask. Okay. Network, which is the network ID for the subnet. Okay. And guys, I'm not going to get into what subnet and netmask and all that are again, okay? Networking is its whole own world, and you can take a whole nother course available for networking, okay? So I'm just going to briefly show these to you guys. We have search, which is the DNS domain name to search when doing lookups on unqualified host names, such as example.com. We have boot proto, which is the boot protocol for this interface. Options are static, DHCP, bootp, and none. The none option defaults to a static route. We have the gateway, so the network router or default gateway for the subnet, okay? And guys, actually, something to know about this gateway, that's just a router, okay? So if you have a router in your home, that's also just called a gateway, all right? So your router has its own IP address, okay? And that's what's being shown here. We also have ethtool_opts. And this option is used to set specific interface configuration items for the network interface, such as speed, duplex state, and auto negotiation state. Because this option has several independent values, the values should be enclosed in a single set of quotes, such as, and we have quotation mark, autoneg off, speed 100, duplex full, quotation mark, okay? We also have DNS1, which is the primary DNS server, such as 192.168.0.254, which is a server on the local network. So the DNS servers specified here are added to the etcresolve.conf file when using Network Manager, or when the pure DNS directive is set to yes. Otherwise, the DNS server must be added to the etcresolve.conf manually and is ignored here. We also have DNS2. This is the secondary DNS server, for example, 8.8.8.8. And guys, funny enough, this is actually a Google server. Okay, so if you're ever trying to ping something, this is a good address to use because Google servers are pretty much always going to be up. And that says it right here. This is one of the free Google DNS servers. Note that a tertiary DNS server is not supported in the interface configuration files, although a third may be configured in a non-volatile resolve.com file. Okay. We also have type, which is the type of network, usually Ethernet. The only other value I've ever seen here was a token ring, but that's not used anymore, guys. Okay. We also have pure DNS. This option, the yes option, indicates that the etc resolve conf is to be modified by inserting the DNS server entry specified via DNS1 and DNS2 options in this file. No means do not alter the resolve.conf file, and yes is the default when DHCP is specified in the boot proto line. We also have a user CTL or user control, which specifies whether non-privileged users may start and stop this interface, and options are yes and no. And then we also have IPv6 init, which specifies whether IPv6 protocols are applied to this interface, and the options are yes and no. Let's go ahead and check those out, guys. Okay. So remember, we're looking in the cat/etc/sysconfig. Oops. Config /network scripts. And actually, guys, I can't remember what my interface is called, so I'm just going to cd to here and then do an ls. Okay. I can't remember what my interface is called. Okay, so it's enpos3, so I'm going to do cat on that file, ifconfig -enp0s3. Oops. Alright, and there we see everything we just talked about. So we have the type, Ethernet, proxy method, none, browser only, no. We have that boot proto we saw, which is DSCP. Default route, yes. IPv4, fatal. We also see more options here that we didn't talk about, but we have IPv6 in it. Some more IPv6 stuff. Name, UID, device, on boot, okay. So here's all those options we just saw set up here in this file. Okay. If we wanted to add any of those other options, we could. Okay, we would just have to put them in this file. Let's go back to our PowerPoints here, and let's go ahead and close out today's session. By talking about configuring basic networking with the networking manager. So you just have to set the host name for modern systems when working with network manager. So a host name is a unique name created to identify a machine on a network, and it's configured in etc hostname. Okay. You can also go to the man pages and see hostname and hostname 7 for the details. So this is page 5 and page 7 of the man pages. So the file can contain the system's domain name, if any. To set the hostname, we would just edit hostname to include a single line with my hostname. So we would do a VI or a etc hostname and just put the hostname there. Okay. Let's check that out real quick on the VirtualBox. Do Control-L. So you can actually list what the hostname is on your system just by doing hostname. It tells you it's that. So if I do a cat Etsy / hostname like we just discussed in that slide, you see that it says that that's my hostname, okay? So I can go into that file, make sure you spell it correctly, okay? I'm going to delete that. I'm just going to put Kev's, oops. Make sure you go into insert mode by pressing I. I'm just going to put Kevin's machine, okay? Let's do right quit. Alright, now when I do hostname, I should update it. I think I'll probably have to restart my machine for it to take effect on that. But I don't want to actually set that as the hostname, so I'm not going to restart my machine. Okay, but you see in there that that hostname is different. You can also set the hostname by just doing hostname and then doing the same thing, Kevin's machine. So we can use this hostname command, and then anything after that, we'll set the hostname. Yeah, I don't think it's gonna like. Just do it like that. There we go. And now you see that the hostname is Kevin. And if I do cat Etsy / hostname, yeah, see it didn't quite update it in there. Okay, so a lot of these changes won't take effect until you reboot your machine or you restart, you know, that networking service. Okay, but that's how you change your hostname, guys. So in summary, we talked about networking services overview, network manager introduction, network configuration files, locations and formats, enabling and restarting network services with systemctl, configuring basic networking manually, and configuring basic networking with networking manager. So in our next session, guys, we're going to go over the LAMP. We're going to do a quick overview of that, configuring the Apache web server, common directives, Apache virtual hosting, configuring an open source database such as MySQL and MariaDB, PHP basics, and Perl CGI scripting. And guys, we're going to do a very high overview of this, high level. So we're not going to go super in detail with these, so don't be too worried. As always, follow these links to check out the weekly and monthly plans for private tutoring sessions for system administrator management, as well as private tutoring sessions for Linux and Bash scripting. Thank you so much, guys. This has been a course and session by coding-bootcamps.com. I've been your instructor, Kevin Downs. Looking forward to seeing you in the next session.